there? Wave if you can hear me. All right, if you stop being able to hear me, wave again. Hopefully I will take that as my sign. This is difficult for me. I actually have stage fright. So you can help me during this presentation if you have questions. Feel free to chime in. Let's treat it a little bit like a dialogue. My name is Lisa Woods. I'm a project manager for Wisconsin Interactive Network. My background is I was a SharePoint Solutions architect for about 5 years, consulting to pharmaceutical and insurance. I was technical editor of SharePoint 2010 for Dummies. And about a year ago, I was brought on board by Wisconsin Interactive Network to lead the projects to move Wisconsin.gov and some agencies into SharePoint. We are using SharePoint 2013 for those projects. We'll talk a little bit more about that. I'm going to talk a little bit about the WIN funding model, the agency templates, and then we'll take a quick look at the backstage experience. I think I have 45 minutes, is that right?
Yep.
All right, so you can also help me by telling me I'm out of time when that time comes. I will try to keep an eye on the time as well. So anyway, we'll get started. All right, so Wisconsin Interactive Network is the Wisconsin arm of a company called NIC, which doesn't stand for anything. It did originally, but at this point, NIC no longer stands for anything, but we do e-government services. We've been in that business for about 20 years. We've done installations in 28 states. That's actually up to 29 now. About 3,000 federal, state, and local agency partners. Some 7,500 e-government services that can be customized and configured for various applications. 20 million transactions worth about 12.1 billion processed through NIC applications. We have about 700 employees, and here in Wisconsin we have 24 employees right now. We've been here in Wisconsin for about 2 years. Big thing about the engagement in Wisconsin as relates to these agency templates is that NIC engages with states, and we have a couple of different funding models that pay for the services that we provide to states. The templates that we're going to talk about today are under what we call a self-funded model, and what that means is that for the agencies who choose to adopt these templates, there is no cost to those agencies. Everybody knows, though, nobody gets anything for free, right? So the cost of the staff that supports those templates is underwritten by the services that the state does pay us for. But there is no direct charge to agencies to adopt the templates that we're going to look at today. No charge for the engagement with NIC, no charge for the process that we lead you through, and no charge for the ongoing use of the server space and the technology. Make sense so far? How's this beat? Am I going okay? All right. So if you've looked at wisconsin.gov in the last about 6 months, since April, you'll notice that it has had a significant facelift from the way that it appeared for the 11 years before that. So when wisconsin.gov was originally established, or at least when the last incarnation of it was built out, it was a workhorse. I mean, if you think about the way the web was 11 years ago, you wanted to deliver information. Dancing hamsters were kind of exciting, but really there wasn't a great deal that we could do, and certainly we didn't need to worry about accommodating things like mobile devices, tablets, and so on. So wisconsin.gov chugged along nicely and delivered information to the citizens. And then 2 years ago, when NIC was brought into Wisconsin, we were engaged to give the site a facelift, bring it into the modern age, and the key thing is to make wisconsin.gov mobile-friendly and responsive for a variety of applications, a variety of interfaces, and a variety of devices. So the new wisconsin.gov uses the heavily Metro-influenced tile-based theme. In other words, we have been influenced by the Microsoft Windows motif, and we have boxes, various configurations to present information on wisconsin.gov, and those boxes reconfigure themselves and reorient themselves depending on the device that someone is using to access the site. We also reorganized the content in the site, refactored the navigation, consolidated the agency directory so that you can see a list of all agencies with a brief description of what each of them does, and then some cross-linking to the top online services for each agency. All of that was built out in SharePoint 2013, and then we moved all the content into SharePoint 2013, built it out, released it on April 28th of this year. One of the other outputs of the Wisconsin.gov redesign project was 2 templates, 2 SharePoint templates that agencies can choose to adopt to use as their agency site platform. Those 2 templates, and we'll take a look at them in a minute, are again at no charge to the agency. They are intended to help jumpstart an agency that is trying to maybe revitalize or update its site. And the big selling points of those templates are that they are cohesive in look and feel with the new Wisconsin.gov. So it's very clear when someone uses one of these templates, when someone goes to a site using a template, that it is associated with Wisconsin.gov, that it's an official Wisconsin.gov site. The templates are also mobile friendly. Wisconsin Interactive uses what we call a mobile-first design approach. So we design sites and build them in a responsive framework, and then target mobile devices first, and then configured it to accommodate the traditional desktop interface as well. So if we think about a concept of a template, then before we take a look at those, a template it's not a custom thing, right? It's a pattern, it's a mold. It can be used to sort of stamp out things that are similar to each other in a repeatable way. If you've ever used a spray paint stencil to maybe put your street address on your recycling bin, make sure that it doesn't get taken away. If you've used that stencil, that's a template. That's going to give you, reliable presentation of letters and numbers. It's going to give you a repeatable way of producing those. It's quick, it's easy, you don't have to rely on your own freehand spray painting when you're trying to convey a message. The templates for the Wisconsin agencies, we like to think they're better looking than those spray paint stencils, but they are templates. They're intended for reuse. They're intended to produce sites that have some cohesion and some consistency, that can be produced pretty quickly, and that are practical and simple and put control in the hands of the agencies without requiring a whole lot of design decision, a whole lot of customization. Make sense so far? All right. So the agency templates then have, and if you're familiar with SharePoint, you'll recognize the concept of a master page, but the agency templates have some components that are delivered by the template. Some aspects of the look and feel are controlled by the template, and the individual agency doesn't have to change those things. They're baked into the interface. And then the agency templates also have page layouts that sort of layer over that look and feel. And those page layouts have containers or content placeholders. And the agencies can pour their content into those content placeholders or those containers. The content will be presented consistently with the templates because of the way the CSS will enforce the styling. And the master page will persist across all pages of the site so that there is cohesion around the look and feel. So you have a combination of things that come with the template that the agency does not directly control, does not directly have to design and manage, with containers, the contents of which the agency does directly manage, maintain, and control. The templates come with a home page layout. That's the standard landing page for the agency site, and then they come with 3 other page layouts that agency authors can choose from. Anytime an agency author creates a page, they can choose from one of these 3 page layouts. They can pour their content into the content placeholders on that page layout. They can publish their page, and it will go live on the site. So this is design 1. This is the first template. This is the home page for template 1. The background image that you see at the top, the same background image persists across all pages of the site, but the background image is selected by the agency. We've got the state capital up there, but various agencies will use different images related to the business that they deliver. Agency logo featured prominently at the top in front of that image, social media icons. We have persistent 7 global navigation items in the blue bar below the agency logo. And those 7 global navigation items then accordion down to 2 sub-levels underneath. So it's an expanding menu. Yes?
Are those global for the agency or global for the state?
Those are global for the agency.
Okay.
Yep. Under the global navigation, then we have a very prominent search bar. Search leverages Google Search API, so if you're familiar with that, we can configure the collection of search results to whichever URLs the agency deems appropriate. So an agency can configure its search results to contain different domains than a different agency might.
So if an agency has their own Google search appliance, can it reference that instead of?
Right now, the templates only use the Google Search API. We haven't had anyone ask us to do that, so we would have to talk about that. It's not part of the standard template package, but depending on the effort to do that, we can discuss that. Good question. All right, so the background image, the 7-item top navigation with the accordion that opens out from it, and we'll take a look at what that looks like. Those things are managed and maintained by Wisconsin Interactive Network. So those are the things that we configure when we stand up your site. We can change them if you want to change your background image seasonally. We can accommodate that. But those are the things that are managed and maintained by the master page. They're baked into the template. They come with it, and those are things that persist across every page in an agency site. Likewise, what we call the tall footer on this template design, that blue footer at the bottom, that's going to persist across every page of an agency's site. And the content of that, again, is managed and maintained by Wisconsin Interactive Network. Stuff that is in the master page can be changed with a request to the help desk of Wisconsin Interactive Network, so it's not a set it and forget it, you're stuck with it forever, but it is the case that content authors and approvers in an agency are not going to be able to change those things on a day-to-day basis because they're going to be focusing on putting content into those containers, managing and maintaining the guts of the pages, as it were. And we've also got an example there then of what template number 1 looks like on an iPhone or other phone device.
There's a blue bar across the top with wisconsin.gov. Is that part of the template, or is
yes. At the very top, you can see there's a tiny wisconsin.gov logo, and there's a link to the agency directory and the online services directory. That is part of the template as well. Thank you, I should have mentioned that. That bar is also available for agencies that choose not to move into the templates or who want to implement that now. That's just a really simple way of providing a link back to wisconsin.gov, providing just a bare bones level of cohesion for agencies who maybe want to implement that right now. We can provide the CSS if somebody's interested in doing that. The other containers that you see on this page then, where it says agency description or agency news and alerts, 3 items that say CTA button, that CTA stands for call to action. Those are placeholders. Those are content that the agency has control over. So basically, this area here, that area there, the agency directly controls and manages. Another look at the way that template displays on a mobile device. You can see that the content reorients itself so that it can be scrolled and accessed on a mobile device. Template 2, a little bit more tile-based, a little more reminiscent of wisconsin.gov. It's got those blue boxes at the top, what we're calling tiles. Agency controls and manages that content as well as the content in the gray boxes. Again, the header, the narrow sweep bar at the top with the wisconsin.gov logo, the global navigation, those things are part of the template managed and maintained by Wisconsin Interactive so that the agency can focus on pouring content into the containers.
Lisa, were you saying, excuse me, when you refer to the gray wireframes in the lower part of this illustration, are you saying that the upper blue tiles are the state of Wisconsin news versus agency news?
No, this is all, these boxes as well are agency content,
okay.
So the agency can, yep. Just a little more detail, a little more containers in this page layout than the other, but essentially the same things available for managing by the agency approvers.
And these templates are available free of charge as long as WIN holds a contract for wisconsin.gov?
So if the contract the contract is a 5-year contract. We anticipate that it will be renewed in 3 years, but of course we don't know. If it is not renewed, that content, this the SharePoint implementation, the sites and everything revert to the state. These templates are managed and maintained on DET servers, not on Wisconsin Interactive Network servers. So DOA has direct control over the infrastructure that's driving these sites. Does that help?
Yeah, awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Quick look at the way that template 2 then looks on a mobile device. You can see the scrolling orientation there on the right. Okay. We're going to take a look at one of the templates live, and I'll walk you through the process of editing the Backstage experience. How many folks in here have used SharePoint before to build pages? Okay, handful? Okay, about half. All right. So I'll give you an idea of what that Backstage authoring experience is like, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it. But a couple of things first. We currently have about 5 agencies on board to use one or the other of these templates. Right now, we're working actively with Department of Transportation to move their content into the site. Their plan to go live is April of 2015, so we've got an aggressive timeline. We're working actively to get their content migrated over. It's exciting with an agency that size, and I got to tell you that an agency that size can be a challenge, because DOT consists of 6, I believe, divisions. And for the first time, they are having the experience of working together on content, whereas previously they were sort of siloed in the way that they manage and maintain their content. Perhaps ideally, a candidate for the templates that's going to get the quickest uptime is going to be a small or simple agency organization, not a terribly siloed agency organization. I know that's a bit idealistic.
Yeah, I guess, how often do you encounter that in government, that things aren't siloed?
Yeah, that's, well, I think what I'm getting, I think really what I mean there is the bigger an agency is and the more divisions it has, the more silos you have. So it's probably more accurate to say not lots of silos, maybe?
Okay.
Yeah. I guess what I really mean is the more divisions you have that are used to working in isolation, the trickier it can be to come to agreement about things like that those 3 levels of navigation. Now we did it with DOT. It was very exciting. We did it. We brought in, we had about 20 business users.
Resolution people.
Yeah, we had about 14 sessions to go through that navigation. I'm an information architect, so we did a lot of card sorting and stuff like that, looking at analytics, looking at other states, the way that citizens think about DOT content, and we kind of used all of that. It took probably longer than it would have with a smaller agency, because we had a big group of folks who needed to come to consensus on that navigation, because that navigation persists across the whole site. Other things that make a candidate well suited for using these templates and getting the site up quickly, the ability to disseminate and enforce standards. So when an agency adopts these templates, the agency identifies folks who are content authors, and the agency identifies folks who have the ability to approve content before it's published and live on the site. So you've got 2 groups of folks who are managing content, and ideally the approvers have some consistent standards that they are able to apply when they approve content, so that the content is consistent in tone and quality and scope and so on. The extent to which an agency is able to communicate and enforce those style standards, those writing guidelines, the editorial process and decision making, those things are all going to make it quicker and easier to stand up one of these sites. Sites that have been recently overhauled may or may not be good candidates. They're frequently actually not great candidates for this, because they've just gone through an exercise to figure out the navigation, and they may have navigation that doesn't slot nicely into these templates. Also, if a site has recently been overhauled, you've got a lot of folks who are still very invested in that. That's an emotional experience to overhaul a site, and it can be kind of tricky if you've recently overhauled your site to say, okay, we did that, and now guess what, we're going to do it again. Yes?
We have some council sites, like the Public Health Council, that have their own URL names. Is that okay or not okay?
Are you with DHS or?
DHS, yeah.
We don't usually offer the templates for councils who need separate URLs, but we have actually talked to Stephanie Smiley at DHS a little bit and about that process. So ordinarily councils and committees wouldn't be included if they had separate URLs. So that we would have to discuss that with each individual agency to figure out how that's going to pan out.
Okay.
Sorry, kind of along those same lines then, would you be able to offer this as intranet-based sites instead of external-facing, so internal only?
That's not part of the contract, and that's not what they're intended for. They're not, my guess is if you've got an internal site, I mean, I don't know what your specific application is, but these are simple and they don't offer a lot of collaboration features and stuff, and if you've got an intranet, it might be that these would be just constitutionally
Our intranet doesn't allow collaboration
Oh.
at all.
Oh.
It's more bulletin board. This is the information you need to know, or
Okay.
it's a library. You look up information that you need to know.
Okay.
It's not a whole lot of, here's a bulletin board to chat kind of thing. It doesn't do that.
Got it. SharePoint is ideally suited for collaboration, as you probably already know.
Right.
These are intended to be public-facing sites, so they're not going to be great at supporting that because they're not intended for if you've got lots and lots of documents, for example. They're not really intended as a document management solution. And I think that the contract doesn't really offer them as internal portals, so I suppose theoretically they could be, but I would really recommend against it.
Okay.
Other considerations that help make an agency well suited for these projects, the ability to designate clear authors who are going to be responsible for content and to communicate, to categorize pages and assign those to folks who will be responsible. Expertise, folks who have the bandwidth to consult on content and to decide, particularly in the event of content gaps, how those gaps are going to be addressed. The ability to dedicate resources related to the coordination of these projects. It's a significant effort to inventory your existing site and figure out for every individual thing on your existing site, where is it going to live on your new site. And that's not specific to these templates, that's not specific to SharePoint, that's something you do when you overhaul your site. But it's a not insignificant effort and it takes a lot of coordination. And so that's a significant consideration, is does the agency have the appetite and the availability of some mechanism to coordinate all the content authors, all the content approvers, the inventory of the content on the old site and sort of mapping it to the new site and so on. And then agencies need to be able to provide some technical resources, and that's around, particularly for agencies that are currently hosting their site someplace other than DET. We've got to figure out how are we going to shut down the servers where the content is currently located. Is there any content that's going to stay live on the existing servers? What's the relationship going to be between DET and the web administrators on the servers for the agency? All of those kinds of considerations as well.
Lisa?
Mm-hmm.
When you worked with DOT to assess and inventory their content, as with many of our sites here, we know that it's just chock full of stuff. Did you offer them thresholds or guidelines? For example, if something's older than 5 years, what kind of things there are you offering or suggesting?
Sure. So we provide a content crawl. We use a tool that will crawl through and enumerate all the items that we find down to several levels deep in the site, and then we provide templates for managing and maintaining a content inventory. So some forms, some list, some workbook formats that you can use to manage that stuff, and then we also provide guidance around how to tackle this daunting task, because there are usually thousands and thousands and thousands of items in a content inventory, and it can be a little alarming. We provide guidance or recommendations around how to tackle that. We recommend that you make an arbitrary decision about things that perhaps haven't been touched in X length of time. You're going to retire, or you're going to worry about in a phase 2. We also recommend things like, well, you can usually ignore images because you can deal with those later, and you want to sort of focus on HTML and PDF and so on first. Recommend figuring out the owner or the responsible group for each piece of content as quickly as possible. So stuff like that. We provide guidance. We can't tell you what you have to do, but we can recommend how you should do it, and we can kind of walk you through those processes. Does that help?
Yep.
Great. All right, I'm going to jump over to the site, I hope. And if I can get so over there, even better. All right, so this is the simple design template in SharePoint. This is not exactly a sandbox, but we've been using it like that. So you can see this has a different background image. This has some lorem ipsum in it and so on. I make that a little smaller, you can see. So that's sort of the basic gist of that simple design template. But I'm going to show you what the content management system is like, at least a little bit. So SharePoint, SharePoint is a pretty robust platform. SharePoint can facilitate records management and workflows and business connectivity and business data and e-discovery and all kinds of other groovy things, collaboration and so on. I can't see what I'm doing. All right.
We can move the podium a bit more if you want.
It's okay.
It's completely movable.
Okay, there. Thank you for suggesting. All right. So the thing that SharePoint actually is least good at is probably looking gorgeous. And we're using SharePoint 2013. When the decision was taken to use SharePoint 2013, SharePoint 2013 was practically brand new. Well, actually, it was still in beta. It hadn't officially been released yet by Microsoft. And if you have worked with Microsoft in any capacity for any length of time, you know that what Microsoft does is they develop something and then they release it into the wild, and they don't really document it. And it is generally up to the users to sort of reverse engineer the cool thing and figure out how it works and figure out how to make it do stuff. That's, again, what happened with 2013. So 2013, first of all, if you worked with SharePoint 2010, you can forget about half of what you know about SharePoint, because 2013 is a game changer. The design paradigm in particular, the way that it is made to look beautiful on a public site, is completely different to the way that it would have been done with 2010. In theory, 2013 by itself supports mobile devices and responsive design. What we found in practice was, no, it doesn't. We use Bootstrap, we threw away the Microsoft framework, we use a different framework. We have had an interesting challenge figuring out just how to make SharePoint look beautiful, SharePoint 2013. So I'm happy to say I think we've licked that problem, but it was not an easy undertaking. The templates look good, and now I want to show you how you can use them. Backstage experience similar to 2010 or other incarnations of SharePoint. So you go in and you can look at the guts or the containers inside SharePoint. This is sort of the backstage. This is all the pieces, parts that comprise our site. Or at least this is all the pieces, parts that a content author can have access to. We don't use a lot of the functionality that SharePoint 2013 has the capability to do, because remember, templates, simple, quick to stand up, quick to implement, quick to use. So SharePoint's capable of a lot, but we're just using a sort of a subsection of that to allow folks to create and author pages on their sites. So SharePoint has the pages library is where the pages on the site reside. And SharePoint's going to think about it, and then it's going to let me see the contents of the pages library. This is the contents of the pages library. Looks like a list. Everything in SharePoint ultimately is actually a list. So a library, just a special kind of list that contains HTML pages.
Sorry,
yeah.
Going back, do you limit what applications and lists are available on that previous screen, or because there is also the SharePoint Marketplace where you can get all kinds of not untested.
Yes, good point. So the standard statement of work for an agency template site basically says, we can't, if you, we don't want you to do that, we don't give you permissions to do that, we don't give you access using Designer, we want you to use it this way. We can negotiate on statements of work, or we can write custom statements of work to do anything else, but the standard template basically says, we're giving you very simple, just HTML and images and documents, and if you do other stuff, we can't really support it. And that's to try to minimize the overhead and...
I was actually kind of hoping that it was, yeah, we lock it down and we don't, and as you know, web administrator, I don't have to worry about.
Yeah, you're not going to see,
author.
you're not, I don't have deity access, but I have site owner access, I believe, so I saw more stuff there than you would see if you were an author.
Yeah.
We can certainly selectively lock other things down. If you've worked in SharePoint, you know that you don't want to mess with custom permissions too much because something will blow up. But we do, that's one reason we really try to minimize. So you can contribute to the pages library, you can upload documents, you can upload images, you can't use Designer. And then we've got approvers, so nothing goes live on the site till it's been approved. So if you'll remember, both templates had that global navigation at the top, one of the blue bars. On one template is kind of a gray bar, but they have a global navigation at the top, and the global navigation informs the top 3 levels of navigation in your site. We also use that navigation structure to configure your pages library. For folks who are SharePoint experts, they probably saw those folders and they went, ouch. Folders are frequently deprecated in SharePoint. We don't like to use folders to organize stuff, but this is one of the rare occasions where it actually makes sense to use folders to organize content because your authors can find the pages that they need to work on quickly and easily, and you don't have to go into great detail about metadata.
You didn't make custom views for them?
We do create custom views for them. But we start with the top level, we start with folders.
Yeah.
And then we try to use metadata for everything below that. So, so Pages Library has all the pages in my site. I'm going to open one so that I can edit it. I'm just going to open one at random. So when I open a page, this is what the page looks like in preview mode. So it's not open for editing. This is sort of a preview of what it would look like on the site. If I want to edit the page, go up here, you can see that we've got a ribbon. That ribbon is reminiscent of what you see in Microsoft Office applications. If you've edited something in Word, you've seen the ribbon, you've engaged with it. In this case, I want to edit this page, so I'm going to select Edit. SharePoint is going to check that document, that page out to me, so that when I'm editing that page, nobody else can open it and edit it. We also have version history turned on, so we keep version history of everything. When somebody makes a change to a page, if they change content in one of the web part zones, and then they save it, we've got all the previous versions of that page. So if you do have an oopsie and somebody publishes something they shouldn't have, or if an author opens a page and edits it and then realizes they probably didn't want to do that, we can revert back to a previous version. With the page open in edit mode, and I'm going really fast because I love this stuff, and also I want to give you a good sense of what it's like. Tell me to slow down if I'm going too fast. We good? When I opened it in edit mode, you can see that these areas became outlined with gray, or this one's outlined in blue because that's the one that's active. That's where my pointer is right now. Those are content areas that I can edit on this page. Now I can put in text, and I can format it using the styles in the ribbon. So the ribbon is similar to what you'd see in Word, allows you to apply styles to your text. What we teach our authors to do, and if you've worked in SharePoint, in other instances, you're probably familiar with this. If you author your content in Microsoft Word or something else, and then you try to paste it into SharePoint, Microsoft helpfully embeds hidden codes about the formatting of that content. And so frequently when you paste something from Microsoft Word into SharePoint, it doesn't look right. Or you can't get it to style exactly the way you want it to. So Wisconsin Interactive provides training as a part of helping an agency stand up the templates. We train authors and approvers, and we train the authors to take a pit stop with their content in a text editor like Notepad. Paste your content into Notepad before you paste it into SharePoint. Notepad is going to strip out all of those annoying hidden Microsoft characters, And so it's going to give you clean content so that when you put it in the page, it's going to be easier to format, it's going to behave predictably, you're going to be able to style it reliably. It's annoying. It's an annoying step, but it's one that you have to take, and there are other content management solutions that require that you do that as well. So anyway, that's how we get clean content into containers. So I can drop text into here. I can insert images. I can insert links to other content. I can insert links to files, pages, other sites, and so on.
So, going back to when you're working with an agency to get them started on this, do you help them identify a style guide, essentially? I mean, you've got these styles defined. It'd be nice if they were defined from the agency.
Right. Well, what we do is we provide a style guide that says, here are the styles that are available, and here's what they look like. We provide guidance around use of the logo, and then we provide the, here are the colors, here are the values for those colors, and then we can work with an agency to say, okay, so we've got the style, we've got 3 levels of nested bullets. We can work with the agency's communications department to say, here's how you're going to use those levels of bullets, or here's how you decide whether something is a heading 1, and if you have a heading 2, you've always got to have a heading 1. That kind of standards. We don't provide those. We can partner with the agency and help you do that, but it's not prescriptive. The templates themselves are sort of prescriptive because they give you a baked-in set of styles, and then it's usually up to the agency to figure out how to apply those. Was that what you were asking?
More or less, and then
Okay.
if, say, an agency was using a slightly different blue than the blues you defined, is that something that, or does that go into custom coding?
Well, what we're doing is we have a process for an agency to request a style. We really want to use that for styles that aren't accounted for, like DOT recently, or I think they haven't submitted it, but they're going to submit a request for a small text style that they can use as a caption for images. That was something that was included in the style sheet already, so they submitted a request. We decided that's a good idea. We're going to build in the style sheet for all the agencies that use that template. So you can do stuff like that. What we don't do is customize for a specific agency when they're using the templates. That would be considered outside of the standard statement of work for that template. Yeah. I mean, when you get a template, we hope they're flexible enough to support most of what the agency has to do, but there is a little bit of accommodation the agency has to do too. Yeah. So edit. I've got my content in there. I'm happy with it. I think it's gorgeous. I can save it. SharePoint is going to think about whether it wants to let me save it or not. Thinking. All right. So my content now, the page has been saved. It's no longer in edit mode. You can see that the page is still checked out to me. What that means is that the content, the changes that I just made have been saved in SharePoint, but they haven't been approved yet. They wouldn't go live on this site yet because they would have to be approved by an approver. We get the basic approval workflow, submit it for approval, and then the approver set gets an email telling them there's some stuff that you need to approve. They can go in and they can approve or reject it. And then content that is approved, once the site goes live, content that is approved will actually go live on the site in 15 minutes. We have a 15-minute timer job that sweeps the newly approved content to the site.
So it doesn't instantly publish everything?
Does not instantly publish. We found even DOT said, that's probably okay. 15 minutes is okay. We probably don't need to push that. We do have the ability in an emergency. Win can push faster than that, but for the agency, it's a 15-minute delay.
We have a 3-minute duplication across our servers. So.
This is some arcane considerations on the part of our architect, and he arrived at that as the optimal configuration. All right.
If you noticed a mistake in that 15 minutes, could you contact Win to say stop?
Yep. And you can also, if you publish something and then you didn't want it published, you can unpublish it at any time as well. If you unpublish it, it'll automatically go back to the previous published version. Or we can always restore back if we had, 3 versions ago and we wanted to go back to that. So quickly, the way this works is that, so they're optional to use. There is no mandate. Agencies are not going to be required to use these templates. Obviously, we would love everybody to have sort of a cohesive look and feel. We provide a package of styling elements so that if an agency wants to give their current site a facelift and they don't have time yet, or they don't want to use the agency templates, we can give you those elements and you can implement them to the extent that you want. It's the framework and all the elements, but we sort of hand it to you and then you figure out what to do with it. Yes.
Is it published somewhere on?
It's not published anywhere. We can
Okay.
I can put it on a thumb drive and give it to anybody.
Because I know, like, when Wisconsin.gov went live, there was an email sent out to all of us saying, you know, here's how to implement the logo and here are the fonts.
Yep.
And yada, yada.
Yep. We still have that stuff. We can tell you how to use the Wisconsin.gov logo, but we don't tell you the extent to which you would replicate the look and feel of these, because that's up to each agency. If you use the templates, you know, we can.
You said in the templates, can you use JavaScript libraries such as jQuery and so on?
We discourage agencies from doing that, and we don't support it because the templates. The vision is for the experts of the agency to be able directly to deliver content via the site. And that, coupled with the fact that these are templates or they're simple, means that we don't really support that kind of thing. We can consult on that stuff. We can build custom solutions. We can configure. We negotiate a different statement of work, but the base template does not.
And all that extra stuff we get charged for.
Depending on what it would
stuff.
be, I mean, if it was an entirely custom site, you would be charged for that.
But like the caption being included in the CSS.
That's not, yeah. So the way WIN works is if someone is engaged in one of these template projects and they have something that they feel like they need to have that's not in the template, first of all, you can make it a phase 2 thing, just defer it till after you go live. Or you can submit a change request and then WIN will research the change request and come back with an estimate before the agency is come back and tell you how much it would cost to do that. One other thing, while we do not support it, you can actually, I'll show you how to do this. You can actually access the code view. And we have folks at DOT and other agencies experimenting with the extent to which they can do things like iframes and so on. Anything you can do in here, you can do. If you edit source, sometimes SharePoint doesn't like what you put in there and it pulls it right back out. So it's certainly wouldn't want your content authors messing with this. It's something that you would want the folks in this room to be playing
So
with.
if we wanted to use some jQuery feature, again, for example, you could put the references in the editable area.
Your mileage will vary on how successful that will be,
Yeah,
but yes.
I get that.
Yep.
I assume just links and hosting of PDFs and Excel spreadsheets is part of the standard package?
The templates each come with one document library, which is different than the pages libraries for the HTML files. You need a document library. That document library, it's not configured in any particular way. It's just a document library. You can put stuff in there. There's a limit in the statement of work on the size of the site, and I think it's 40 gig. I can't remember. So there is an upper limit on the size, the overall size of the site. That can be extended, and the agency can pay the negligible additional fee if they need additional storage. As a SharePoint person first and a Temple portal person second, I would say if you have a really significant document management needs, that it would not be ideal to use these sites for that. But you can put whatever in that document library that you want in terms of documents. Yeah.
And then their version as well.
Yep, we turn on versioning, yep.
How far back? Is it unlimited versioning, or do you put a cap on?
Right now, we're not putting any cap on that. Again, it's not a document management solution. You really wouldn't want to use it for documents that we're changing all the time. And you would eventually hit against the max size for your overall site, but.
Well, it does only store the diff.
Yeah, you can get an awful lot into the document. The functional, I mean, really the functional thing becomes if you've got more than 5,000 items in your library, you're going to have problems with views, you're going to have problems with people finding stuff. It's in there, but it's very hard to get to it anymore at that point.
Is there, have you guys looked at the ability to add additional document libraries or do any sort of custom work with document libraries?
That is something that I'm lobbying for. I would love to do a custom document solution for somebody. Certainly an agency could negotiate that they needed 3 document libraries as opposed to 1, and we could amend the statement of work during the discussion. That would be pretty simple to do.
Yeah.
The tricky bit, if you're thinking about using the templates, one of the lessons learned from the immense DOT, but which can be applicable to lots of agencies, is think about the stuff, try to figure out what's mission critical, and does that fit neatly in the template? And if it doesn't, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to leave it where it is? So for example, Department of Transportation has something called MAPS, which is some sort of accountability and reporting, and it's got an Oracle backend, as I understand it, that delivers some data in relatively real time, some kind of reporting about the business of the Department of Transportation. There's no mechanism gracefully to present that content in the templates, so we've had to have a discussion about what they're going to do with that, what the disposition is going to be of that. If you've got mission critical stuff, think about that and consider whether it's going to fit neatly in the template. If you don't know, we'll come in, we'll talk to you about it, we'll take a look, and we'll figure that out together. But that's really the most important consideration, I think, is figuring out, can you take a phased approach and leave some things where they are? Can you come to decision on the big stuff like the navigation? And then is all of your mission critical stuff going to be accounted for somehow during that cutover? And I think I'm over time. I'll talk about SharePoint all day and all night. So, but I want to be mindful of you folks. So I will hand out my business card. Feel free to contact me. I think the process, if an agency wants to use the templates, is that they have to get on the eGov monthly agenda to be considered and prioritized for the project. But feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to talk to you about that. If you have other questions or you need another demo, anything like that. Love to talk SharePoint.
Okay, Dave, you're supposed to cue us for the standing ovation.
Well, I was just waiting for somebody else, now that Lisa handed out her cards, to ask another question. But okay, you were at only 47 minutes, so you're fine.
Oh, all right.
So, okay, well, time for that standing ovation we talked about. Very well done. Okay, so Lisa gets packed up and Nate comes on board here. Any general questions or feedback from Brian on the logo? No?
For the record, it's Dane's logo.
Yeah. Wow. There's a lot of new faces here that came in behind us here. Okay. One thing when we were talking just before Lisa got going here was that Phil had suggested somebody in his agency, DCF, was a person that was an expert on search engine optimization. Easy for me to say. If people, again, have ideas about other presenters or presentations or information that they would like, by all means submit them. I thought that was a fantastic suggestion because it's certainly not anything that I'm an expert on, and it would be nice to hear from somebody who is. So if you have suggestions, by all means, please share them. Nate, do you need any help getting set up?
Do we have to do anything besides plug it in?
I don't believe so.
Perfect.
All right.
So this is my talk of Hello Drupal 101. Just basically how awesome Drupal is and I guess let me know if anybody has any questions as I go through. And I have blatantly plagiarized from this Aquia training course, Hello Drupal. And it's okay, it's open source. So I am allowed to do that as long as I reference it.
This is the attribution part of it.
And then Drupal Camp Wisconsin, I sort of took a look and feel. And I guess a little plug, every summer there's a Drupal Camp Wisconsin where you can come learn more about Drupal, and I'm one of the people that puts it on, so shameless plug. So me, Nate Millen, my website is Drupal. I tossed Bootstrap on there. It's ugly, apologize in advance. I work at Department of Public Instruction. That's the website URL and my email if you have any questions. And I'm one of the local Madison meetup people. We meet every month, once at night and once during the day, and try and have regular sessions on different Drupal topics. Again, another shameless plug, if you want to learn more about Drupal, it's a good community and trying to grow it. So what is Drupal? So Drupal is a CMS, content management system, and Drupal has been called a Lego. You have all these building blocks and you put them together and you get a website. So Joomla and WordPress are two other open source solutions out there. There's a different learning curve for each of them, and they're just different solutions for different problems. So I'm not going to knock any of them, but of course I'm a Drupal fanboy, so just FYI. And so with Drupal, the example here on the left would be more of a WordPress solution. WordPress, everybody's heard about it. Out of the box, you get all this awesome stuff. It's very easy for editing, but at a certain point, in my opinion, you're going to reach a point where you can't scale anymore. What happens when you have 1 million pages? What happens when you have 1,000 editors? And you need to have 20 different roles of different editing levels. WordPress can't handle that. There's definitely been sites that do things like that, but in my opinion, it's not the best. Drupal, you can do crazy stuff like this. So Drupal, it's very highly customizable. It's called a CMS, but really it's a CMF, Content Management Framework. For developers, there's APIs for everything. So there's a database API level or layer that Drupal will run on any database. It doesn't care. So Drupal, you'll just write a command in human talk, I guess, for a query, and it will make that, if it's supposed to be MongoDB database, SQL, MySQL, Drupal will take care of that. So that way you can run on anything. And the Drupal community is probably the biggest thing that I would say that it's awesome. In the Drupal community, you'll hear there's a module for that. So Drupal modules offer extra functionality. If, let's say, you want an event calendar, you get 3 or 4 different modules, and then you would just click around and have them work together. So the Drupal community, it's open source. Everybody's done a lot of the heavy work. A big thing about the open source community is, contribute back. So when I find you don't have to be an expert, just trying to help other people along the way. So that's one thing why I talk about Drupal. If you find a bug with Drupal, it's great to submit a patch in the project queue, then somebody else adds it to the project, and somebody else is maintaining your code. Because at the end of the day, I don't want to maintain any code. And some people do. Like when I went back to school, I took a Ruby on Rails class. And after having experience with Drupal, just doing the normal salting and hashing of passwords seemed tedious to me. And I want Drupal to take care of that for me. So I don't think either way is right or wrong. It's just how you want a website to help you out. The main thing is, I think Drupal will help you get stuff done. So Drupal is free. It's open source, anybody can use it, anybody can contribute back to Drupal, but free beer Open source, this is a bad analogy. It's really free puppies. So open source, it's a free puppy. Everybody has probably heard the story about a puppy gone horribly bad. They tear up furniture, not well behaved, and others have seen those dogs that will balance 50 treats on their nose. Drupal can be either or. Everybody has probably heard about the Madison School District website. That's a Drupal website. What happened was, I don't know all of the information. The short version is Drupal Geddon happened. Drupal had a security release for 7.32. So the main Drupal version is level 7 or version 7. In the minor, there was a security release that came out, and I had emails to my bosses, basically me freaking out, that during the security window, third Wednesday of every month, there was going to be a security release. It was going to be bad, because I heard about it 3 days in advance. Usually you don't hear about them. You just know there's a window, you're by your computer at that time. So what happened was there was a SQL injection attack. The database abstraction API that I talked about, there was a SQL injection vulnerability that allowed anonymous users to take over your site. They could execute PHP on your site, create files, you name it. It was a 25 out of 25 on the Drupal security standards scale. That's not good. That being said, in like the BBC, there was an article in the BBC, Madison newspaper mentioned the Madison School District. That being said, Drupal has a very good security standard. Like, if you look out there, Drupal, or not Drupal experts, just security experts, in their opinion, Drupal is very secure. This is just what happens sometimes with any project. So Drupal traditionally runs on the LAMP stack. Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP, but it can work well in others. So at DPI, we use the LAMP stack, but we're going to transition to Windows and SQL, just because that's what the server guys and the SQL guys have expertise in. And truthfully, I don't care what the server environment is. If those guys are more comfortable in Windows, IIS, perfectly fine by me. I may have to patch a module or two, but otherwise, the city of Madison, they're running on Windows. And the School for the Blind down in Janesville, they're also running on Windows. So Drupal can run on Windows, although the LAMP stack is what it's most tested on. So I mentioned sort of the CRUD, that I don't like create, read, update, and destroy. It's not me. So I don't want to create my own database tables, my own fields. What I want Drupal to do is I want Drupal to take care of it. So here's a screenshot of how somebody would create a screenshot field of type image, and it's just all done in the GUI. And that would create the necessary database tables and fields, take care of that. And so you can add fields to users, content types, taxonomies, and Drupal has services. So before the meeting, we talked a little bit about the HR jobs thing. And on wis.jobs, it would be great if there was this services API that you sent it a URL and it would spit you back some JSON or RSS or XML. Well, with Drupal, that's possible to build a services thing. And so in the Drupal world, it's called headless Drupal, where you're using Drupal just as the content repository. So all the information would go into Drupal in the database, and then you would build an app that would make an AJAX request out to the server and get the new page content. So an example of that is the Great Wolf Resort Lodge. So Dan Stout, he works there, and he made a presentation a couple weeks ago on this. And so what's happening after you load the application, update search, And so there's this new request. Aperture calls that the response is getting the text. So what happens is Drupal is making this call out to the server, and instead of reloading this entire page and having a different URL, well, it updates the URL, but the background image, all the text doesn't really change. The only things that change is which rooms are available, what type of rooms they are, and the pricing. So this is one way of creating something that, this is, I guess, a trend right now. And there's different JavaScript frameworks out there that do this. This is not a Drupal thing. This is how Drupal would do it. Some of those would be Backbone, Spine, Node.js, are a couple of the JavaScript frameworks that are pretty exciting right now. So one thing that I think is great with Drupal is the display of content. Like on your homepage, if you have a blog or something, and you want to have a listing of all the blog articles, and you have this image which is part of the article. So you would have the header of the article and an image, and then some text here. Well, then on the full page of the article, you would have a bigger image. So how you could do that is you would have one piece of content, an article, and then you would query the database for the front page. So again, I mentioned I'm not a big fan of writing code. So in Drupal, there's this views module. And this is the code for the DPI homepage slideshow. What it actually is doing is this query. So you don't write this. By default, this is turned off, so you don't see it. But if you're having a very slow query, you can look into it and try and troubleshoot what's the problem. But Drupal will take care of a lot of the heavy lifting. All of the most of the configuration can be exported into code, and then version control, and then so the workflow would be localhost or in development. Do all your changes, you export them to code, look over your code, make sure it's correct, and then push your code into production. So that way you have source control, but you don't have to manually do this query. So another huge thing with Drupal is the community. Since there's a large community, there's a lot of integration with different services. So these are just a couple of the projects. So Google Map, Superfish is the drop-downs. MailChimp, LDAP is great, and I've used that to integrate with Active Directory. So you literally install the module, which you can do from the GUI interface, and you talk to your AD person, ask for the credentials for anonymous user, and maybe a little bit extra configuration, but I've set this up on sites in a couple of hours. All the heavy lifting is done, and together, these solutions, many people work together to make these solutions work very well. So there are some examples that if you have a proprietary solution of Wis.jobs would be the example. Couldn't figure that out. There was a solution that I could have written some custom code to scrape the website and get me the information. Instead, I used a different API, different service to do that for me, so I'm not maintaining custom code. Because at the end of the day, I may not be a DPI my entire career, and I want to make sure that the next person after me doesn't have to maintain my spaghetti code. Because let's face it, all of the past developers, their code is spaghetti code. But my code is never spaghetti code. So I sort of mentioned if you have a blog article and you have an image field, wouldn't it be great if you didn't have to have 2 or 3 different sizes of that image? So Drupal does that automatically. So it has this image styles functionality where it will scale and crop the image to the correct sizes that you need for like slideshows, for a blog listing, if you want to have a 150 by 150 image next to the text for all of them, take care of that, because end users, they may not be well versed in Photoshop. They may not know when to use a PNG versus a JPEG. So this is a great way of taking care of that. Side note, yes?
So does it scale it, or does it crop it, or how does it do that?
Up to you. It can do either or both. So the drop down, you can add different effects. So there's scale and crop, scale, just crop, and there's additional modules where you can add extra functionality. So one great one would be able to take an image like 2000 by 2000, and let's say I just want to have a headshot. You just click and drag the headshot, and it will scale and crop that to the dimensions that you want. So that way you don't need Photoshop. Or if you have, if you want to put a watermark on all of your images, if you have a photograph website, you can have an extra module that will add the watermark. That'll add the rounded corners. And those aren't Drupal solutions per se, just Drupal is integrated with other open source solutions out there to sort of leverage what other people have done.
So it turns the images into like vector images, more or less?
No, it will save them as JPEGs or PNGs. But the rounded corners, it will make them as a PNG with transparent background. You just specify the border radius.
So it's good, smaller, but if you have a small image and want to blow it up, you're gonna have the same problems if you're gonna do that normal.
Oh yeah, small image to
Okay.
big image is never a good time. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, you can't go up, but you can definitely go down. And actually, when you have the image field size, I always set a minimum size of what it will be the end result, so that it can never get blown up. You can also set a maximum size, so that way people aren't uploading a 2 megabyte image. But also Drupal does have image optimization baked in, and you can integrate with other ones if you don't like Drupal's option out of the box. So that way you can specify, okay, Drupal, when you scale and crop images, save images at 85%. And just by knocking it down 15%, you can save a 1 megabyte image instead at 100 kilobytes, which you just have to be careful so that way your images don't get pixelated. Because it may have happened to me where the graphic designer optimized all the images, then uploaded them to Drupal, so they optimized them in Photoshop, which is the perfect solution. Then they uploaded them to Drupal, and Drupal saved them and optimized them again, and then they got pixelated. A little bit, but graphic designer, he could tell. So, careful. Don't optimize images twice. So again, Drupal, there's a huge community. This is a photo of the Drupal at DrupalCon Amsterdam, which was this fall, I think September. I didn't get to go. But the next DrupalCon, and DrupalCons are twice a year, one in Europe, one in North America. Next one is Los Angeles in May. There's a lot of Drupal camps in this area. Drupal Camp, Wisconsin, another shameless plug. Iowa, Twin Cities, and Chicago. And again, there's meetups. So if you go to that URL, you'll find them. There's a group in Milwaukee. There's one sort of the Boyd area, one in northern Wisconsin. And the Drupal community tries to help out everybody because there is a steep learning curve. Don't be shy about it. Drupal is tough to get started in, but if you ask other people, you'll save yourself a lot of headaches. So I didn't learn this lesson for my first year. I banged my head against the wall and sort of, what you mentioned with SharePoint, is that there's not always all the documentation out there. Same thing's true with Drupal. But it's something that asking other people and demos is the way to go. It will save you a lot of headaches. And also just, I mentioned how there's a module for that. That's a blessing and a curse. You can build a slideshow 50 different ways. Not all 50 ways is a good idea, so you can get in trouble. So, not that I've never done things the wrong way. So, I'm going to do some live demo install. Simplytest.me, it's a website where you can create a Drupal site, sandbox, for 30 minutes and then I'll just disappear. So I'm going to show Drupal 8. Right now Drupal 7.33 is the recommended version. Drupal 8 will come out sometime in 2015. Drupal 8 won't support IE8 because of a jQuery dependency that Drupal 8 won't support IE8 out of the box. There'll be a module for that. But I wouldn't recommend using Drupal 8 if you're looking to go to Drupal until Drupal 8 has been out for at least 6 months. But Drupal 7 has a lot of awesomeness.
So that actually brings up a question I was going to ask you earlier. Do you then try to stay a little bit behind the curve, or do you stay on the bleeding edge of releases?
The 733,
Yeah.
I stay on the almost bleeding edge. The security releases, I stay on the bleeding edge. I patch the DPI sites within an hour of the release. If you weren't patched within 7 hours, you should consider your site hacked. But for the Drupal 8, I will have my personal site probably migrated to Drupal 8 just because we're all out of test site. I just want to play with the new awesomeness. At the same time, DPI won't move for a long time. It's a lot of content cleanup that we're dealing with right now. But yeah, enterprise solutions, 6 months to a year after Drupal 8 is released, I wouldn't recommend until after that. And that's what Acquia is a big Drupal company. That's what they promote also. So simplytest.me, you can install a Drupal site. Here we go, Drupal core. There's different versions of Drupal. So if you wanted to try Drupal 7, but like Drupal 8. Here's advanced options if you wanted to install a theme. So theme is the look and feel of the site. Modules would be for the functionality. So a theme or a module you can install here. And again, for this, you just type. But I'm just going to show you what happens with base Drupal 8. So I'm really looking forward to Drupal 8 because it's going to have a WYSIWYG text editor in core. It's going to have views, querying the database in core. It's going to have a lot of configuration management in core. Right now in Drupal 7, there are pain points. But there's workarounds, there's a module for that. But with Drupal 8, a lot of those pain points will be solved. So Drupal, it's international. Just a standard install. The minimal will install next to nothing. And this is where you would install your personal, if you were installing Drupal on your server, this wouldn't be filled out. There's also often places that offer free hosting and do one-click Drupal install. So if you want to have a server environment, just play around with at night or at work, that's an easy way, so that way you don't have to install XAMPP or MAMP local server on your computer. So here's where you can add the site name. And admin, perfect. Perfect. So Drupal is now installed. So Drupal 8 out of the box, everything is responsive. It's mobile first from the get-go. So if you're on a phone, this would be your editing experience. You have a little toggle, content, just going to add some content. By default, Drupal has 2 different content types, an article for like a blog and a basic page. You can create your own content types. I actually recommend that. That's one of the big benefits over a WordPress. WordPress has the 2 basic content types, and so you can create an image one for slideshows, events. You can do other big ones, sidebar block to just try and have people sandbox into their little area. But so a basic page, some title. So Drupal 8 has the CK editor baked into core, which CK editor, it's pretty amazing. I've just spent the past couple of weeks reconfiguring the DPI text editor, and CK editor is a third-party open source project, so non-Drupal. I would highly recommend it. It's pretty slick. So just some body for the page. In Drupal, there's different text formats that you can have. So just basic, full. You'll notice that there's more buttons. So this could be set up per user, per role. So that way, some people would have access to more text formats than other. You could have it set up so that way JavaScript wouldn't be allowed in the basic HTML, but full HTML, people could have access to add inline JavaScript. Personal pet peeve, I will not let people use the background color or font size. And CK Editor is just going to strip those out for me. Because right now the DPI site, just when people copy and paste from other sources, they're getting junk styling. They don't know how to fix it. So I'm going to try to make things real easy for them. So I'm going to create a menu link, some title, main navigation, the URL, some title, and so you can create new revisions and logs. I would recommend it, but you don't have to. So this doesn't look pretty. Drupal out of the box won't, but I'll sort of show you what it looks like. So really cool thing, you'll notice this little, well you can't see it, but I'm hovering over a little pencil marker, so you can do quick edit. So people won't have to, oops. So this is a different editing experience where you don't have to leave the page to make a quick edit. Which,
so if you misspell the, you can fix it.
Yeah. So this is something that I'll show you on the DPI site. This is part of my rollout of new features. Some of the Drupal 8 new awesomeness, they backported to 7, so that way you can use it now. But when I go back in here,
is that in the editor, in CK editor, that you can use back to 7?
CK editor you can use in 7.
I mean, I'm using that now. I'm just wondering about that feature for.
Oh, that was
a separate module. There?
It's called Quick Edit is the module,
okay.
and it's part of the Spark initiative. So the thing that I was trying to do, and apologize, I'm not fully versed in 8 yet, but the revisions tab. So you can see the different revisions. You can add on an extra module. Diff is what I use. So that way it'll show a diff of the 2 pages, what you updated, because this does not help very much. So we'll go back to site. So overall, I'm really excited with Drupal 8. Drupal 7 is cool too. So I'll show you, just compare to the DPI site, what we're doing now. And just don't tell anybody at DPI. I have a presentation on Thursday where I'm going to roll this out, so.
Don't want to spoil this crowd.
Exactly. So I guess this is our dev site. So this is what the DPI site looks like right now. I'm part of the instructional media and technology team, and so this is what it looks like. This is what it'll look like once I push out the changes. So there wasn't too much done. Most of it was CSS and styling, added new features, but I mentioned quick edit with something Drupal 7. So if I want to change something here, I can save it, then revisions, can compare it, and I'll highlight the difference. So I didn't make a big change because I'm sort of presenting on this, but I can clone this page. So clone of that, and here's the CK editor. I want to bump it out. This image, a browse server, and I'm just putting these so I don't put them in the wrong place. Perfect. So right now that image doesn't look too good, but it's something that the CK editor can scale and scale it. I don't have the cropping feature in there, but just want to get something on the page. So there's a lot of different publishing options. You can save it as a draft, so that way the page will be unpublished. If you need moderation for pages, you can also do that. There's a module for that. I'm not a big fan of moderation because I guess I've talked to people and showed them how it works. Drupal has a workbench moderation module, which works really well for that. At the end of the day, the person who would compare the content and be like, yes, this goes live, they don't have time to moderate content, which I think is a stopgate. It's not technology, it's more of just the person who's responsible for the content. You guys make it live. So I have a new page that I can blow away. So one cool thing with CK Editor is you can create these little page templates. So if I want to replace the actual text on the page, and of course dev, so it's not the right template, but it's something that the content authors, they don't know how to make this layout. So it's a div and a div, a couple of classes, an image, h2. I don't want my content authors to know what a class is. I don't want them to know what a div is. They just want an easy button. And that's what I'm going to give them. Also, I'm going to have grids. Right now, a pain point for me is that people use tables for non-tabular data. Crazy talk. So what I've done is I've created a div. Grid pack was just a place I found responsive tables. The site isn't responsive, but it'll just be present tiles. And I have some JavaScript that will go through there and make sure that they're equal height. So there'll be grids, there'll be some backgrounds around them, and everything will be perfect. And the best thing about it, nobody needs to look at the HTML page. They can if they want to. All they need to do is click on the source button. But I guess one thing that I'm trying to do is not have them worry about this template in there. So that's sort of my goal right now with the DPI site, is to just give people what they need, give it an easy button, so they can be responsible for the content.
So have you ever done a Drupal setup that used workflows at all, or?
Yes, I've set it up, I've demoed it, and then people ran away. So, let's see here.
So the works, those are more or less just handled outside of Drupal.
Yeah, like in a day-to-day, it seems like people pass around a Google Doc or a Word document, and then they get all the corrections, and they're like, okay, great, this goes on the website. But using Workbench, so this is a new sort of landing page. So I'm admin, so at the end of the day, I want people to only, site editors, to only see this button, My Workbench. They can create different types of content. These are all the content types that I have on the site. And they all have different fields in them. So I want somebody to come here, see what they need to edit, and so it's a one-stop shop. They don't have to try and find whichever page they were looking for. And an add-on module for this, Workbench Moderation. So that way somebody would get an email when the content, it goes from draft to needs review, published. And just when I explain that and show it how it works, there's no, somebody has to take the time to approve it, and that's always the stop gate. But yeah, it's totally doable. I just don't recommend it.
Yeah. We have one division that would probably really benefit from this kind of workflow, but most of the other divisions don't use that. So
yeah, and that's something that, depending on the content, need legal to look at it. Is one example I've heard is a very good use case. It can be turned on for just certain sections, or certain people could have elevated permissions, and just in that one section of the site, the content authors would get demoted.
And before this, we were all talking, so this is hosted at DPI?
Correct. Yeah.
Do you know if DET hosts any Drupal sites currently?
I'm not sure. It's something now, the goal is for DPI to self-host the Drupal site just on the Windows server and SQL server, but I'm not sure if they do.
They have at least two in Drupal 7. One is Governor's site and one is the First Lady's site.
Okay.
So that's all I have. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
How is Drupal for accessibility?
Very good. There's a lot of modules in Drupal have taken an accessibility standard, and Drupal is very big in higher ed. So I came from UW colleges, and there's add-on modules that you can check for accessibility standards, but out of the box, Drupal has been accessibility first.
Couple questions. You said there is ways to do inline JavaScript on the pages. Can you also link to a JS file?
Yes. So that's the preferred method, and that's what I do. I just have Drupal ships with Drupal jQuery. So, and Drupal allows you to use jQuery or a different JavaScript library. So you just need to make sure, if you're using one of those, to make sure to wrap your statements so that way there isn't a namespace conflict.
Okay. And then, if you were doing a small website, let's say just a dozen pages, would you use Drupal or would you use something else?
Personally, yes, because I have a hammer and everything looks like a nail to me. But I did got married a while ago, and when I did that, I did a Drupal site, and I wish that I hadn't. I wish I had gone out and just got a free wedding website from somewhere, because Drupal was overkill. So if you do have a 10-page website, WordPress.com is great. It can do a lot of things, or just one-click installs, heck, even HTML, static HTML. But for me, I can build a Drupal site faster than I can in any of those. Mind you, the wedding one. But it's something that, for scaling, I had a talk with somebody a while back about they want to do this website for now. I'm like, great, if that's all you want, WordPress. But if you want to do all this fun functionality, with multiple users and gamification and stuff, Drupal. So, depends.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Nate, I just wanted to see your site.
Oh.
You had said it was ugly. I was just curious what ugly was.
How ugly is it?
So, this is my site. It's a Bootstrap, and I tossed a boot swatch on there. So it made it look prettier. Let's see here. Can't get the corner. Here we go. So Bootstrap, you've probably seen this at a bunch of sites.
Sure.
But for me, I use it to, let's see here, if I don't really blog, I need to. Go SpeedReader Go. So this is just a cool thing. This is not Drupal. This Brits, it's a company that came out with this technology that you can speed read real fast by just seeing this one word at a time. So like,
Isn't that Natalie Morris and her husband, or?
I'm not sure. But it's supposed to be reading reimagined for smartphones and for like watches, which I think is cool. So what happened was this guy at Penn State that I sort of Twitter stalk, in a loving and caring way. So Brian, he created this speed reader module because somebody saw that Spritz thing. This is sort of how the open source community works. They see a cool thing, they reimagine it, so they redid that. So here's the original JavaScript thing where they redid Spritz using jQuery because the idea could be done in jQuery. And then, so after that layer of abstraction, Brian created a SpeedReader module, which you could plug into any Drupal site. And then I was like, great, I've been meaning to read up on Treasure Island. So I took that, made an example, and of course I still don't have time to read 500 words per minute. But I noticed a bug, so I submitted a patch back to Brian and fixed the project. So the open source community, it's sort of interesting. It's sort of like a drug because you get addicted to it. So yeah.
Okay. I was just curious.
Yeah, the really cool thing that I do with the site is that I use it to scrape websites to see when new content comes out. So I read comics. So like the Oatmeal is one of them that I read. And so I want to be alerted when there's a new comic. So I use a feeds module to scrape the website and then pulls it in, and then it checks the old version versus the new version. If there's new HTML, I'll get a notice on my website when I'm logged in. So that's just a very geeky thing that I love, and the $7 a month I pay for hosting is well worth it.
All right. Other questions for Nate, or? Okay. Well, thank you very much, and I think Nate gets a standing ovation as well. Other questions before we call it a day? Suggestions? Anything else?
Next year.
I'm sorry?
I was just going to say next meeting is next year.
Yeah, we'll have to work out a date. I'll coordinate with Michael in regard to the room and see if this is available, or...
I've essentially reserved it for the next 2 or 3 months.
Okay,
So,
okay.
guesstimating on dates.
Okay, and as I said before, if anybody's got presentations that they're looking for, or by all means, if you want to be a presenter, jump to the head of the line here, because it would be awesome. Thank you very much for your time, and we'll see you next year.